But those Rouhi books are not healthy because they're substituting people's personal practice for turning inwardly and connecting with God through Qibli and Tazkiyah and Ziyarat and Zikr and Sawaj, Hikmat, and Saluk, that they're not understanding why prayer and fasting and the individual's connection between their soul and God is the foundation of their spiritual life and their relationships with others and the foundation of society. That is what's missing here. Everything they keep compiling together are projections to the proclamation of the kings and rulers of the world. We don't need to keep sending that out. People need to be doing the Bahai work, which Shoghi Effendi says is their own inner work, which we published in our second workbook, Tazkiyah. And those workbooks are student-driven. They're designed for people to become independent of all save God, so they don't have to constantly feel like they can't do anything without prior permission, or they have to seek permission to be told what to do, or they have to blindly imitate what other people are doing. No, 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 no. That's all for the fire. Baha'u'llah threw it all in the fire. For God's sakes, the second principle of the faith is the independent investigation of the truth, meaning that the oneness of humanity goes hand in hand with people's independence of all save God. This is what they should be working on, is deepening in the 12 principles through personal spiritual practice of, as defined by the writings themselves in these 7 practices of spiritual perfections, which of course are based in prayer and fasting. I just wanted to say that we're pointing this out so that people can have an opportunity like Madeleine Albright to just be like, oh, look, the people that we thought were the successors to Shoghi Effendi were wrong. We need to become right. And we forgive those who came before us. It's none of our business. That's between them and God. God used them in his fashioning and used opposition like opposable fingers and thumbs to fashion us today in the spiritual and everlasting image so we could be those true Bahais who are firm in the covenant. I mean, suppose somebody's a descendant of Abdul Baha from one of his daughters and relatives of Shoghi Effendi that had left the faith. So Mirza Yaya's son came back and met Abdul Baha and became a Bahai. Abdul Baha wasn't like, oh, you're from some awful family. You know, he didn't do that. He welcomed him. He included him. He embraced him. So we embrace all people. If Mirza Yahya is welcomed back in the faith, which Baha'u'llah said he was in the Octas, and his own son came back and accepted Abdul Baha, well, certainly all the people who identify with Babi or Bahai in any group around the world are always welcome back if they recognize what the covenant is and they want to be part of that community. And if they want to stay in the communities they're in, we support them. More power to you, because God is still working his cause through the people. Nobody can stop God or thwart his purpose. Verily, he separated the servants from the servants. So this is what I'm trying to say about this. We're not saying that these people are condemned or pointing things out. Oh, look, you came out from under the covenant. You didn't accept the true house of justice, which was set up on January 9th of 1951. Everybody broke the covenant. You're part of that community. It's all over with, too bad. That's not the Baha'i revelation. The Baha'i revelation is the oneness of humanity and the independent investigation of the truth. And if everybody in their day and generation is going to have to know for themselves if this is the legitimate house of justice or not. They're always going to have to see the criteria that the current Davidic king fulfills or the current elected house of justice will fulfill, and make sure it's the government that they are authorized to have according to the charter. Everybody's going to have to see this through their own eyes. They just can't accept it because it's the state of affairs and the status quo of the society they lived in. For God's sakes, if the Bob and the Bobbies would have accepted the status quo of what was left of the codger mismanagement of the country, they wouldn't have had the revelation in the first place, and nobody would know about the second coming of Christ now. Same with Jesus and the apostles. If they would have accepted the status quo of the Sadducees and Pharisees at the Sanhedrin in 30 AD, there'd be no Christianity. What if Moses and the slaves accepted the status quo of Pharaoh? We'd still be in Egypt. So this is ridiculous. This whole thing is so that God can create an individual human being in his image. Let us make man after our image and after our likeness. Well, is God dependent on turning to someone else? So God doesn't know what to do. He'll ask someone else. No. Does God not know the answer? No, God knows. God's all-knowing. He wants us to become like him. Well, the only way we're going to become all-knowing and omniscient and stuff like this isn't through ego and materialism and controlling the middle management of commodity transference to run a well-oiled society, or the mail or the garbage or electricity. No, it's if we turn directly to God. Yeah, he bestows his knowledge upon us. That is true education. This is the core spiritual foundation of what's inside a human being. Getting an education at school to read and write and learn culture and figure out what aspect of society we can fit in to benefit other people, that's all the outgrowth of the true spiritual foundation. And as long as we're playing follow the leader, even if it's following the leaders on Haifa, we're going to be lost. I know for me that I'm not going to give all my life and all my money and all my energy and all my time and all my effort to some cause unless I know that it's actually factually true and for real. This is all I promote in my personal teaching effort. I'm willing to share with other people on occasion what my reasons are for believing what I believe and for understanding things the way I understand them. And I just come into an understanding with other people on that. They're still free to do what they're going to do in their life, because how do I know what their life is? I'm not them. They have a personal relationship with God. Therefore, God has purposed in the oneness of humanity to make everybody an independent thinker of the truth. And that's why so many people are leaving the other 6 Bahai groups, because they're dictatorial, they're autocratic, they're oppressive. Even if they have a republic that votes, they vote on things that are absolutely not to be gone against or questioned. I mean, oh my gosh. Can't we live in a free and open society and have this pure spiritual democracy and free thought that Abdu'l-Baha writes about when he says pure spiritual democracy? The purpose of the Baha'i administration is to organize a feast, an international gathering, the Rizwan festival at the Holy Land. They should have been building the orphanage and the asylum and the scientific university on Mount Carmel that Abdu'l-Baha said they were supposed to. They've had 60 years. They've done nothing. There's no social services for the Palestinian people or the Jewish people there. Whereas when Abdu'l-Baha lived there, he was giving coats and food to the Palestinians and the other people that needed it, that were in need. So this is how they derailed the faith's teaching effort there, but that hasn't affected my personal teaching effort in my life. And I'm preparing to leave my body in the next 50 to 60 years, certainly before the age of 155, and leave this plane of existence. So why do they think they're in this plane of existence? We're here to become independent thinkers and not blindly follow the leader. And this can't happen unless individual people read the will and testament for themselves and go by the criteria and see it. Now, once somebody does see this, they can't wake anybody else up. It's like the rest of them are still in the delusion. They have to read it for themselves. And we can pray that God wakes them up. But it's more important that we're woke and that we're able to then meet with other people who are woke. Most of the people who are woke to this are not self-identified as Baha'is. But according to Abdul Baha, if they're woke up and they're the living embodiment of Baha'u'llah, then they really are Baha'is. And that's why I've maintained, and I still maintain now, that aside from the people who claim to be Baha'i, but don't know the covenant, the majority of the people of the world are actually Baha'is in reality. They experience it like Abdul Baha said in the Certitude of Reality, like they're on fire with the love of God and the oneness of humanity, and that's a real Baha'i, even if they haven't heard the word or whatever words they use. If they're on fire with the love of God and have the oneness of humanity, this is what a Baha'i is. So we point this out like we did with Madeleine Albright to give them an opportunity while they're here on earth to change their ways. And she did. And you can be sure that Abdul Baha has embraced her and introduced her to Dr. Leland Jensen, who made the comment in the presence of Baha'u'llah himself that she is able to be the first world leader in this generation to attain a visitation and acceptance from the Supreme Manifestation because of the legacy that she's left, that we have to keep God and the presence of God and God consciousness and his presence of awareness when it comes to these security agreements and sharing of property in the Holy Land and other governmental administrative issues. We have to have the love of God, she said, when we do this, which is what Abdul Baha said, or it won't work. So thank goodness for this great saint, Madeleine Albright.